Family, we're here in the courtyard of the Sanctuary of St. Joseph of Cupertino in Osimo, Italy. We're here with Father Silvanus, a Francescano, who is the custodian of the shrine here. He's going to share with us some of the beautiful insights in the life of St. Joseph of Cupertino.
The wonderful thing that you experience when you come here immediately is the joy of St. Francis and St. Joseph of Cupertino. You have a feeling that you want to fly, levitate, just the way he did. So we're so gifted to have with us the superior of this convent and to tell us about someone I know he loves very much, St. Joseph of Cupertino. Puoi dire la storia di San Giuseppe che vuoi dire ai nostri fratelli e sorelle negli Stati Uniti?
It is a pleasure to share with our brothers and sisters in the United States the life story of such an important saint as Saint Joseph of Cupertino.
Una sua straordinaria attualità.
It was June 17, 1603. His family had been stripped of everything to satisfy debts his father had accrued for others. Homeless with only his mother and a few barn animals present, like the baby Jesus before him, Joseph was born in a stable. The task of raising Joseph fell to his mother, who wielded a heavy hand. She rarely showed the boy affection. Years later, Joseph would jokingly say he had no need of a novitiate as a religious. He had gone through his with his mother. She often took him to church. When he was 8, he made a little altar at home where he could recite the rosary and litanies to Blessed Mother and the saints. His ecstasies began at that time.
Joseph developed ulcers on his legs. Unable to walk to church each morning, his mother carried him to a hermit who had the gift of healing. All the excruciatingly painful surgical torture brought no relief. Only when the hermit took some hot oil from the lamps burning before the image of Our Lady of Grace and placed it on the sores was Joseph freed from all pain. He walked to a church 9 miles from his home. He began fasting 2 or 3 days in a row, abstaining from food of any kind. He ceased eating meat, subsisting solely on vegetables seasoned with a bitter herb. He desired more and more to leave the world and unite himself with things above.
Joseph asked his uncle, Father Francis Deza, to help him join his order, the Franciscan Conventuals. When he ridiculed him for dreaming he could ever become a priest, Joseph went to the provincial of the Capuchins and begged him to accept him as a lay brother. Joseph received the habit on August 1620. His joy was to be short-lived. As his performance of daily duties proved unsatisfactory, a sad and wounded Joseph was relieved of his beloved habit and thrown out of the order 8 months after his entry. His agony was so great, years later he would say, "It seemed to me as if my skin was torn off with the habit and my flesh rent from my bones."
He bleakly walked toward Vitrara and his uncle, Father Francis Deza. His uncle allowed Joseph to remain with him until after Easter, after which he accompanied him to Cupertino, to Joseph's mother. She greeted him with blows to the head and cuts to the heart. It was not that she did not love him, she was afraid for him. Now that he was home, what would happen to him? His mother took on the order of conventuals. You can just imagine what transpired. They grudgingly accepted Joseph as a tertiary. He was ecstatic over his new apostolate, tending the mules and his other barnyard friends. He whistled happily as he performed all sorts of menial tasks for the brothers. Although Joseph never felt worthy to become a priest, evidently God did.
The students invoked the aid of St. Joseph of Cupertino as patron of the students, as patron particularly of the students of the seminary. We see on his tomb a request to pass their tests.
Okay, so here's another area, parents, where if your children are having any kind of a problem with their schooling, St. Joseph of Cupertino had a very difficult time in the seminary, and he fought it so hard. He wanted so much to be a priest that he has been named the patron saint of seminarians and students as well. So there's always hope.
And I think it's such a wonderful example. And we've been seeing this all over the world, how our seminarians are fighting to be priests. They are following the traditions of the church, the faithfulness to their bishops and to His Holiness the Pope. So this spirit of St. Joseph of Cupertino lives today. So one of the interesting things about St. Joseph, who I'm very much in love with, is that the great theologians said that they would learn more from him, from this simple soul who had difficulty, who had been poor, who did not have the great education, the cultural background of these great men. They learned more from him than they had learned in all their years of study.
This is very important because we can see the difference of the concept of science according to God and a science according to the world. On June 19, 1625, he entered the novitiate at Grotella. Because of his obvious virtue, although not having the required education, he took his solemn vows and made his profession as a Franciscan, receiving minor orders on January 30th, 1627. He was admitted to the subdiaconate February 27th, barely a month later, and became a deacon on March 20th of that same year. God was with him all the way. When interviewed for the diaconate, he was questioned on the only gospel passage he could remember and explain. It began, "Blessed is the womb that bore thee." On the day of his examination for the priesthood, the prelate, impressed with the answers given by the first friars he cross-examined, passed the rest of the candidates. And so Joseph was ordained March 18, 1628, and celebrated his first Mass on March 19th, Feast of St. Joseph, his namesake.
Joseph returned to the monastery at Grotella after his ordination. Each day, his work done, he would steal away to a remote hideaway. As he meditated on the Lord, he would become engulfed in ecstasy and find himself levitating in midair. The brothers later testified at his beatification. His ecstasies and levitations recurred so frequently, he was not allowed to take part in spiritual exercises with the other brothers or walk in processions, lest he disturb the proceedings. Father Joseph chastised his body through means of mortification. He fasted almost unceasingly, eating no food on Thursdays and Sundays. On these days, he lived solely on the Eucharist. After receiving his Lord, color would return to his face and renewed strength to his weakened body.
He became famous, people of all stations in life flocking to him for spiritual direction. Unaware of his holiness, a vicar general brought Joseph before the Inquisition, charging he performed miracles, attracting the faithful to himself as a Messiah and healer rather than to Jesus. Father Joseph willingly agreed to appear before the Inquisition. Always obedient, always humble, he was looking forward to the findings of the Church in the matter of his gifts.
Shortly before Joseph was to leave for the Inquisition in Naples, Jesus came to him as a child, his clothes shabby and ripped, his little body weighed down by an enormous cross, forewarning his little priest of the way of the cross he was about to walk. When he arrived at Naples, Joseph set out for the palace of the Inquisition. A young, very handsome religious caught up with him. Walking beside him, he spoke gently, instilling confidence in Joseph, bolstering his courage, fortifying him for the trial ahead. As he was about to enter the palace, Joseph looked back to his companion who had begun to pull back. He was gone. Father believed to the end of his life that St. Anthony was the religious who walked beside him.
The members of the Inquisition questioned him for weeks. At the end of intense inquiries, they found him without any stain of self-interest or guile, all concurring he was leading a virtuous life.
Era un uomo umile e profondamente animato dallo Spirito del Signore.
È molto importante questa parola. It's very important that word is humble.
Humility.
Humility. You're going to hear this throughout the lives of the great saints of the saints.
Now,
Humility.
it's possible that this man had more humility than many because he just constantly believed that he was no good and he was nothing. And
He deserved nothing.
He deserved nothing.
Yeah.
Now, an interesting thing, after the Inquisition found him innocent, they celebrated Mass, and at the Mass, he levitated.
Yes.
News of his vindication spread. His fame grew more widespread than before. Father Joseph was directed to bring the message of the Inquisition to Rome. The Father General in Rome ordered that he be sent to a secluded monastery. But the news of his holiness and flights of ecstasy reached the Pope himself. His Father General brought Father Joseph to an audience with Pope Urban VIII. Upon kissing the feet of His Holiness, he became so in awe of this sweet Christ on earth, he went into ecstasy and levitated, remaining midair until his Father General ordered him to awaken. The Pope said that if Father Joseph were to die while he was still alive, he would give testimony as to this miraculous occurrence and to the holiness of this priest. Because of Father Joseph's piety, the Pope commanded the Father General to send him to a monastery best known for its strict observance of the rule of St. Francis. And so Father Joseph was sent to the monastery in Assisi. On April the 30th, 1639, a truly jubilant son of Francis entered the ancient city of his seraphic father. But like Father Francis before him, he would know perfect joy. His superior humiliated him in the company of the other friars, treating him with the greatest suspicion and disdain. His brother friars looked upon him as a hypocrite and charlatan.
But nothing was to compare with the dark night of the soul he was to suffer, as Jesus withdrew his love and comfort from Father Joseph. No more ecstasies, no more encounters with this heavenly family. The greatest pain was during the celebration of the Mass. He felt dead. He felt alone.
So you would say with somebody like St. Joseph of Cupertino, it's almost impossible to think that he could have the dark night of the soul, that he could experience a dryness and the lack of the presence of God in his life. And Father just said a terrible thing. He said that is obligatory in the life of every saint.
That's the
that
truth.
they have to go through this. And we believe it's true that all of our great saints, and we say, why? They were so close to God.
Yeah.
Why did they have to go through this period of darkness and of dryness? Well, we just got the answer.
È stata la via di Gesù
It is the way of
Cristo. È stata la
Christ.
via
It's
di
the way
Gesù
of
Cristo.
Christ.
Non esiste.
Father Joseph desired to return to his Lady of Grotella. Instead, his superior sent him to Rome, and it was there, after 2 years of silence, the Lord spoke to him and told him he would return to Assisi. His heavenly gifts returned. He was once again experiencing heavenly ecstasies. His return to Assisi was met with joy and celebration by not only the friars, but by everyone in the village. They led him into the church. Upon raising his eyes to the fresco of Mother Mary on the ceiling, Father Joseph cried, "Ah, dear lady, you have followed me," and flew approximately 40 feet upward toward his mother, his arms outstretched to embrace her. With tears flowing, he pledged his undying love to her and her son.
His ecstasies became more frequent. At the mention of God, he would become impervious to pain. When he was subjected to needles piercing his flesh, repeatedly struck by iron blows from heavy iron rods, his body burnt by flames of a torch, there was no reaction whatsoever. He would remain transfixed, his eyes heavenward, his body poised midair. In the history of the Church, rarely has it been documented in the life of another mystic or saint the phenomenal amount of divine ecstasies, miracles of healings, and supernatural occurrences that have been attributed to St. Joseph of Cupertino.
In his 17 years at Grotella, Father Joseph levitated over 70 times. The most spectacular occurred when the friars of the monastery were erecting a Calvary. The middle cross that was to hold the corpus was over 36 feet high and by far the heaviest of the three. Try as they may, 10 men could not lift the cross. Upon seeing their plight, he flew 70 yards, scooped up the cross as if lifting a feather, and planted it in its appointed spot.
His Father Superior ordered him to exorcise demons, but Father Joseph, feeling unworthy, would address the demons in these words: "Out of obedience, I ask you to depart from this person, but if you do not wish to, do not. All that is necessary is that I obey my superior." This humble act of obedience would so baffle the fallen angel, he would leave the tortured soul.
Miracles happened through St. Joseph of Cupertino's intercession, as stated at his beatification. His prayer was never in vain, but always obtained what he implored for the welfare of the soul and body. Even those who merely commended themselves to him received the desired favor at the moment he prayed for them.
Our Joseph, our St. Joseph of Cupertino, had a tremendous love for Mother Mary. From the time he was a child, she was like his mother. He used to call her Mama.
And when anyone came to St. Joseph, and they did, they learned about the gift of healing that he had. And they would come to him asking for healing. They'd ask for prayers. A priest once came to him and he said he'd lost his vocation and that he was about to leave the priesthood. And he said, turn to your mother. Turn to Mother Mary. The priest did, and he died a faithful priest.
Another time, St. Joseph was ministering to a dying man, and he put some liquid to his lips, and the man swallowed it and started to come to life. And when St. Joseph asked him if he felt better, he said, yeah, he did. And St. Joseph said, tell no one about me. Give full credit to your Mother Mary, who takes care of you.
Another time, someone came to him also asking for healing. He took oil from in front of this image of the Blessed Mother, and he placed the oil on the person. And the person said, oh, great healer. He said, oh, I have done nothing. This is a gift from the Blessed Mother. Humility, humility.
You know, we've said this before, but this just bears the fruit out. Every time we tell you this, some other way we get an affirmation of it. We don't know of any of the true mystics, the visionaries, the stigmatists, the saints, the brothers and sisters who came before us, who did not have a great devotion to our Mother Mary. Mary is your best friend. She is your mother. She will take care of you. Take advantage of the gifts that we're given. Don't throw them back in the face of the Lord.
Father Joseph read men's hearts, the perfect confessor. When someone came to Father Joseph with sin on his soul, Father would tell him to go and wash. On one occasion, a young noble came seeking help. Father told him to go and wash, make a contrite confession, that his face was black with sin and abhorrent to look upon, then come back and see him. When the young man returned after having received absolution, Father said, now, my son, you are beautiful. Wash yourself frequently. Yesterday, you were ugly.
Joseph also had the gift of prophecy. Reliable witnesses testified he foretold the events before they came to pass. He not only foresaw the deaths of Pope Urban VIII and Pope Innocent X, he predicted the time and the day when they would die. He predicted incidents in his own life long before they happened. Father Joseph foretold the ascension of King John Casimir to the throne of Poland.
One time the Lord would come and rest in Father Joseph's arms. Another time the saints would come and share the awe and wonder of paradise. Angels would appear to him and bring him comfort and consolation from heaven. But wherever the heavenly army of angels is, the fallen angels are close by, ready to do mischief. One day when he was praying before the tomb of St. Francis in the crypt of the great basilica in Assisi, the devil blew out all the candles in the church and proceeded to beat Joseph. All of a sudden, the demon saw St. Francis emerging from his tomb carrying a candle, and needless to say, he fled.
St. Joseph would place his cap on a blind man's head, and his sight was restored. The lame and the crippled walked after they kissed the crucifix he held out to them. During the plague, which claimed many lives, he blessed a poor soul burning up with fever, making the sign of the cross on his forehead. The fever immediately dropped, and his temperature returned to normal. With the sign of the cross, he brought the dead back to life.
There was a Lutheran prince and his friend, also a Lutheran, who wanted to see St. Joseph of Cupertino, and a Catholic brought the two of them to Mass. At the moment of consecration, when St. Joseph went to break the host in half, it wouldn't break.
It was like a rock.
Like a piece of stone. And as hard as he would try, it wouldn't break. And so he let out an anguished cry and levitated into the air. When he came down, again he tried, and finally the Lord allowed himself to be broken in half.
Now, his superior asked him after the Mass what had happened, why he couldn't break the host, and he said it was because the people you brought here had such hard hearts. They don't believe what we teach in the Catholic Church.
The next day, he celebrated Mass again. Well, the Lutheran prince wanted to see again for himself. Again, he was at Mass with his Lutheran friend and the Catholic, where this time, when St. Joseph of Cupertino raised the host, the cross on the host turned black. St. Joseph levitated into the air, 15 feet into the air, and cried and moaned. That was enough for the prince. We really don't know why, but all we know is what happened. He converted to the faith. But do you remember what his friend said?
He said, "Cursed be the hour that I came into this country. For at home I was much more at peace, but here I am tormented by inner doubts." See, because St. Joseph of Cupertino had put doubts in their mind as to the teachings of Martin Luther, now they were seeing the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist. They were seeing the need for priests, which had been outlawed and taken away by Martin Luther.
It was not St. Joseph of Cupertino who brought about the conversion of this Lutheran priest. It was the Eucharist.
The real presence of Jesus.
Now, what are we doing today? What idiots we are today. We just run from alleged apparition to alleged apparition, alleged visionary, alleged mystic. Some, I'm sure, are. But Father is saying, even though St. Joseph of Cupertino passed the test of time,
He did not bring about conversion, but the powerful presence of Jesus in the Eucharist.
St. Joseph had the gift of bilocation. As his mother was approaching death in Cupertino, he was in Assisi. She was weeping because she would not see her son before she died. Suddenly, a bright light filled the room. When she saw her son standing before her, she cried out, "Oh, Father Joseph, oh, my son," closed her eyes, and expired. At that very moment in Assisi, Father Superior was asking the weeping Joseph why he was grieving, to which he replied, his mother had just died. Many witnesses swore they had seen and heard Father Joseph assist his mother on her deathbed in Cupertino.
Fearing for his sanctity in the light of his fame, Pope Innocent X directed the Father Inquisitor at Perugia to have Joseph moved to a remote place where he would be able to continue leading a virtuous life. An order came through that Joseph was to be taken from Assisi to the secluded monastery of the Capuchins in Pietrarubia. He continued to have ecstasies, especially during the Holy Mass. People came from far and wide, and the church became too small. The people pulled the roof off to get in, knocked holes in the walls. He remained 3 months when the saint was called to another remote monastery. The conventuals pleaded with Pope Alexander VII to have Father Joseph return to Assisi, but he ruled in favor of Osimo.
in his heart, Joseph of Cupertino was sad that he was not going to be in his beloved Assisi near his father Francis. So in the dark of night, he was almost spirited into the monastery here in Osimo so that no one would know that he was here. But when he awakened the first thing in the morning, what did his eyes feast upon but his mother, Our Lady of Loreto, Our Lady whom he had said litanies to from the time he was a little boy, when he first started to have ecstasies. And he knew that under that statue was the holy house of Loreto, the holy house of Nazareth, the house where his Lord Jesus and Mother Mary lived for so many years.
Now we're told that he bilocated to this place many times in his lifetime. But when he got to Osimo, which is only about 10 or 12 miles away from Loreto, and he saw the holy house, the very first thing he saw in the sunlight was the holy house of Loreto. His first flight was to the holy house of Loreto.
He foretold the day of his death, prophesying to his fellow religious he would die when he could not receive Holy Communion. On August the 10th, 1663, he developed a very high fever.
The only time St. Joseph was allowed to get out of bed or could get out of bed to any degree was to celebrate Mass. At the end, when his fevers rose so high that he was completely debilitated, he asked, could he at least assist at Mass?
Because he was just too weak to be able to celebrate Mass himself. But as our Lord Jesus came to us during the consecration of the Mass, he could feel the presence, a strong presence of Jesus, and his face would begin to glow.
Joseph of Cupertino died at midnight, September the 18th, 1663, at the age of 60. The cause for beatification was soon opened as documentation of miracles poured in. On February the 24th, 1753, Joseph of Cupertino was solemnly beatified, and on July the 16th, 1767, St. Joseph of Cupertino was raised to the ranks of the Church Triumphant.
What we have told you over and over again as we have tracked the lives of the saints, that they are not dead, they are not old bones, they are alive. They're as alive as the Word of God. They're as alive as the Eucharist who dwells in the tabernacle, who comes to us each day and changes us. They are as alive as the unity that comes about when we receive Him and we become one flesh with our dear Lord Jesus.
Write us at the address on our screen or call us in the United States at 1-800-633-2484.
We love you.